The summer sun had just begun to warm the quiet suburban streets of Brookhill Avenue, a cobblestone-lined neighborhood tucked in the green hills just outside Boston, though it felt more like a corner of the English countryside than New England. Ivy crept lazily up brick walls, roses bloomed in careful bursts of red and ivory, and the distant hum of cicadas stitched the air with sleepy rhythm. Elena Moreau, 19, stood under the shade of an old oak tree, wiping a bead of sweat from her brow as she surveyed the estate across the road. It towered like something out of a painting, 3 stories high, with wrought iron balconies, tall arched windows, and a garden that had clearly been left to its own wild devices. It was her first day. The job was simple. Summer landscaping. Cut the grass, prune the hedges, maybe pull out the roses that were beginning to climb too high. But the house. It was anything but simple. Her mother had gasped when Elena mentioned the address. "That house," she'd said, going pale. "That belongs to the Varnier family." Elena hadn't asked more. Her mother had a past full of unspoken stories, and Elena had long stopped trying to unearth them. She adjusted her gloves and walked through the ornate black gate, the soft creak echoing in the stillness. The garden was overgrown but not neglected, almost like someone had once tried to care for it, then suddenly stopped. The vines curled with purpose, the roses tangled like secrets. And then she saw him. He was sitting on the stone steps of the veranda, dressed in a crisp white shirt with the sleeves carelessly rolled up, dark trousers, and a book in his hand. Liam Varnier. She recognized him vaguely. A face she'd glimpsed behind tinted car windows, in silent hellos across the street. His features were sharp but not cold, like someone who'd been taught to wear indifference like a suit but never truly grew into it. He looked up as she approached, surprised. "You're the new gardener?" he asked, closing the book and standing. His voice was low, thoughtful, with a trace of British lilt, not quite local, not quite foreign. He had the kind of voice that made her want to listen. "Elena," she said, smiling despite the heat. "Just for the summer. Your parents hired me, I think." "They hire a lot of people," he replied, then hesitated. "But I didn't expect someone like you." "Someone like me?" She raised an eyebrow. "You look like you should be on the other side of the gate," he said, holding a glass of lemonade. "Not digging in the soil." She laughed. "I'll take that as a compliment." He smiled then, brief but real, and nodded toward the garden. "Come on. I'll show you where the tools are." As they walked, Elena stole glances at him. He moved with quiet grace, the kind that came from private schools and polo matches, but there was something else, something lonely in his posture, something tired in the way he didn't try to impress her. "This place used to be beautiful," he said, kneeling to lift a fallen trellis. "My mother loved the roses. Why did she stop taking care of it?" "She left," he said simply, dusting off his hands. "Moved to Europe. My father is mostly in Zurich now." Elena paused. "So, you're here alone?" He didn't answer immediately. Then with a shrug. "Mostly." The afternoon passed quietly. She pulled weeds while he painted the old garden bench. They didn't talk much, but the silence felt soft, like the breeze that rustled through the lavender bushes. As the sky melted into orange and lavender, Elena sat back, looking at their progress. "You know," Liam said, settling beside her on the grass, "this might not be so bad." She looked at him. "What?" "This summer." And there, beneath the golden sun, in a forgotten garden and among tangled vines, something small and new began to grow. Something not yet love but not quite ordinary either. It had been 5 days since Elena first stepped into the Varnier garden. 5 long sun-stained days of pruning wild rose bushes, repainting forgotten benches, and restoring flowerbeds that had once known tenderness. And every day Liam had been there. Sometimes he read while she worked, sometimes he helped, awkwardly at first, like someone unused to dirt under his fingernails. But lately they had started talking more. About books, about music, about nothing and everything. But tonight was different. The sun had dipped lower than usual, casting the entire garden in a warm amber hue. Fireflies danced like tiny stars in the air. Elena sat cross-legged on the freshly mowed grass, holding a glass of lemonade Liam had made. Surprisingly well, she thought. "You know," he said, seated beside her on the steps, shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows. "I think you've done more for this place in a week than anyone has in years." "Maybe it just needed a little care," she said softly, watching a firefly land on her wrist. "Sometimes things don't need to be fixed. Just remembered." Liam turned to look at her, his gaze lingering. "Is that your philosophy on life?" She smiled. "No. That's just what I tell myself so I don't feel like I'm wasting time trimming other people's roses." He laughed, a real full sound that made her heart skip unexpectedly. And then silence again, the kind that doesn't ask to be filled. Until Liam spoke. "My father never liked gardens." Elena glanced at him. He was staring into the darkness, voice distant. "He only built this one because my mother wanted it. She used to sit out here for hours." Said the roses reminded her of a place she once loved. He paused. "In France, I think." "Where in France?" Elena asked, something pricking in her chest. "I don't know," he said. "She never told me." That silence again, thicker this time, almost heavy. Then Elena said, "My mother's from France too." "Normandy." Liam's head turned. "Really?" She nodded. "She left when she was 18. Said she wanted to forget everything behind." "Sounds familiar," Liam murmured. They sat for a moment longer before he asked, "Do you ever wonder what your parents were like before they became parents?" "All the time," she said, then grinned. "But I get the feeling mine were far more interesting than they let on." Liam's eyes sparkled. "Care to bet?" "Oh, you think yours win the mystery award?" "I know they do," he said, standing suddenly. "Come on." She blinked. "Where are we going?" "You're not the only one with a secret stash of lemonade," he said with a smirk, already heading toward the side of the house. Curious, Elena followed. He led her through a narrow path she hadn't noticed before, lined with hedges and shaded by climbing ivy, and stopped at a small greenhouse, half swallowed by vines. "This place hasn't been opened in years," he said, pulling open the old wooden door. The air inside was thick with the scent of earth and memory. Dust floated like whispers. In the corner stood an old trunk, battered and locked with rusted clasps. "My mother's," Liam said, kneeling beside it. "I found the key once when I was 12, but I never opened it." "Why not?" "Because I wasn't ready." He pulled the key from his pocket. Elena hadn't even noticed him take it. With a soft click, the trunk opened. Inside were letters. Hundreds of them. Some tied with red ribbon, others loose and yellowed with age. Photos, black and white, faded, of a younger woman who looked unmistakably like Liam, standing beside a smiling man who wasn't his father. Elena reached in and gently picked up one letter. Her hand trembled. A signature. "With all my love, Camille." Her mother's name. Her eyes widened. "This can't be." Liam froze. "What?" Elena backed away slightly, heart pounding. "My mom's name is Camille. Camille Moreau. That's her handwriting." Liam looked at her, stunned. "Elena," he said slowly. "Are you saying?" "I don't know," she whispered. "But my mother. She worked as a maid for a wealthy family one summer in Boston. She never told me the name. She said it ended badly." They stared at each other, the weight of the discovery pressing on them like fog. A loud crack of thunder broke the silence, lightning slicing through the summer sky. Within minutes, rain began to fall. "Come on," Liam said, grabbing her hand and pulling her back into the house. They ran, laughing breathlessly, soaked and confused and electrified. Once inside, they stood in the grand hallway, dripping and shivering. Elena looked up at him. "This changes everything, doesn't it?" "I don't know what it changes," he said. "But I don't want it to change this." He stepped closer, water still dripping from his hair. Their faces were inches apart. "Liam, don't say anything," he whispered. Not yet. And then he kissed her. Softly, almost uncertainly, as if asking a question neither of them fully understood. Outside, the rain poured harder. Inside, 1,000 unsaid things bloomed like flowers in a forgotten garden. The rain had stopped some time before dawn, but the silence it left behind was louder than thunder. Elena stood in front of the mirror in her room, towel drying her still damp hair, the events of last night looping in her mind like an old film reel. Liam's lips on hers. Trunk. Letter. Her mother's name. Camille Moreau. She felt like she had opened a door she hadn't meant to, one that led not just into someone else's life, but into the hidden, unspoken chapters of her own family's story. That afternoon, Elena stood on the wraparound porch of her home, twisting the hem of her shirt. She stared at the garden across the street, the Varnier estate, where Liam had yet to appear. She hadn't told him she was leaving. After the kiss, after the way his hand lingered in hers, she couldn't find the words. And maybe she was afraid of what might come next. Inside the house, the scent of fresh bread lingered. Her mother, Camille, was in the kitchen, humming softly. The same melody Elena had heard since she was a child. A lullaby, old and foreign. French. "Mom," Elena said, stepping into the kitchen, her voice more hesitant than she intended. Camille turned, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "You look pale. Didn't sleep well." "Not really," Elena admitted. Then, without preamble, she asked, "Mom, do you know someone named Varnier?" The humming stopped. Camille's hands froze. The silence that followed was so still, even the clock on the wall seemed to hesitate. "Elena," she said slowly, "why would you ask me that?" Elena stepped forward. "Because I found something. Letter. With your name. In a house across the street." Camille sat down. Not dramatically. Not fearfully. Just as if she knew this moment had been waiting all along. "I was wondering when this would catch up to me," she said, voice barely a whisper. Elena sat across from her. "Tell me the truth." Camille's eyes glistened, memories swimming just behind them. "I was 17. It was the summer before I was supposed to go to university in Paris. But I didn't want that life. I wanted something else. So I came here. Boston. Through a family connection, I got a summer job as a maid in a mansion. The Varnier estate." She nodded. "I was only supposed to stay for 2 months. But then I met Julian. Liam's father," Elena said. Camille looked up sharply. "You've met him?" Elena shook her head. "No. But I've met his son. Liam." Something in Camille's face shifted. "You're working there." "I was hired to fix the garden. That's how I found the letter." Camille closed her eyes. "God, the garden." Elena's heart beat faster. "What happened, Mom? What happened between you and him?" Camille was quiet for a long time. Then, with a shaky breath, she said, "We fell in love. Or at least we thought we did. It was intense, stupid, dangerous. Julian was supposed to marry someone else. His father had already arranged everything. But he said he didn't care. That we'd run away." Elena listened, frozen. "But then," Camille's voice cracked. "His family found out. His father fired me, threatened me, said if I didn't disappear, he'd destroy my family back home. So I left. I never even said goodbye." "But you wrote him," Elena whispered. Tears slipped from Camille's eyes. "I wrote him one last time. From the airport. I didn't even know if he'd read it." Elena felt like the walls around her were crumbling. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" "Because I wanted to protect you," Camille said. "From all of it. Power. The cruelty. That world isn't kind to girls like us." "But Liam's not like that," Elena said, maybe too quickly. Camille looked at her sharply. "You're close to him." "I don't know," Elena admitted. "It's new. It's complicated." And then Camille said the words Elena wasn't ready for. "He could be your half-brother." Elena's blood went cold. "What?" Camille stood, walked to the window, trembling. "I didn't know for sure when I left. And I didn't want to know. I couldn't. Elena stood, heart pounding. You think Liam and we're? No, Camille said quickly. I don't. I married your father years later. But I just don't know. Elena pressed a hand to her chest, breath ragged. I kissed him. Camille turned around slowly. I kissed him, Mom. The silence after that was unbearable. That night, Elena didn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan, thinking of Liam. His laugh. His hands in the dirt beside hers. That kiss. Could it be real if it was born of lies? Or was it real because it happened before the lies got in the way? By morning, she couldn't take it anymore. She marched across the street, heart in her throat, and rang the bell. Liam opened the door. He looked like he hadn't slept either. Elena, he said. She didn't wait. We need to talk. They walked to the garden, now glittering with dew. She told him everything. About Camille. About Julian. About the letter. About the possibility, the fear that they might be tied by blood. He listened. Said nothing. When she finished, her voice was shaking. Say something. Liam looked at her, eyes unreadable. Then finally he said, Then let's find out. What? I need to know who I am too, he said. If Julian lied to you, he lied to me too. He stared. You're not scared. I am, he said. But I'm more scared of losing what we have. Whatever this is. It's worth fighting for. Then, from his pocket, he pulled a folded paper. I found this in the trunk after you left, he said. It's addressed to me. From Julian. Written before he died. He handed it to her. Elena opened it with trembling fingers. Her eyes scanned the words. Her breath caught. At the bottom. I never told Liam the truth about the summer that changed everything. But he deserves to know that Camille was the only woman I ever truly loved. And Elena, if you're reading this too, know that you are not my child. But you are my regret. Elena looked up, tears falling freely. Liam took her hand gently like she might shatter. So we're not. No, she whispered. He leaned forward, forehead resting against hers. Then maybe we can begin again. And as the sun rose over the garden, lighting up every broken petal and crooked stem, they kissed again, this time not as neighbors or lost children, but as something new, something that had a chance. For the first time in weeks, Elena felt as though she could breathe again. The shadows of the past hadn't vanished, but they had shifted, receded just enough to let light in. After reading Julian's letter, it was as if something tight around her chest had snapped loose. She wasn't his daughter. Liam wasn't her brother. Their story, though tangled, was theirs to write now. And so the garden bloomed. Literally. Together, Liam and Elena had transformed the once-forgotten piece of land into something alive again. Petunias, white hydrangeas, soft ivy spilling over stone borders. A gravel path twisted through the garden like a secret waiting to be walked. The fountain had been cleaned and filled. Water flowed again. I think the birds like it more than we do, Liam joked one afternoon, as two robins squabbled over a branch near the rose bushes. I'm fine sharing, Elena said, brushing dirt from her knees. They don't judge my terrible pruning skills. You just need practice. Oh, is that why you keep me around? So you can feel like an expert? No, he said, and his voice lowered just enough to make her heart flutter. I keep you around because everything makes more sense when you're here. She blushed. That's dangerously close to being romantic. He leaned closer. What if I'm trying to be? Before she could answer, the sound of a car pulling up to the front gate broke the moment. Elena and Liam stood slowly. The vehicle was sleek, black, and unfamiliar. A man stepped out. He was tall, sharp-suited, with silver at his temples and a cane that didn't seem necessary. He walked with the confidence of someone who owned every room he entered. He didn't smile when he saw them. Instead he said, Liam Varnier, I presume. Liam tensed beside her. Yes. The man looked him up and down. You look like your father. Pity. Who are you? My name is Theodore Varnier, Julian's brother. Your uncle. Elena's breath caught. Liam blinked. That's impossible. You were disowned. Theodore gave a dry smile. And yet, here I am. He stepped closer, his eyes never leaving Liam. I heard of Julian's death late. No one bothered to tell me. Not surprising. But now that he's gone, there are matters of inheritance to be settled. Liam's jaw clenched. The will names me the heir. Yes, Theodore said, his voice cool. But I contest it. Elena stepped forward. You can't just. He cut her off with a glance. And you must be the gardener girl Julian wrote about. Camille's daughter, yes. Elena froze. You knew my mother. Oh, intimately, he said with a sneer. But don't worry. I'm not here for old ghosts. I'm here for the estate. This house, this garden. All of it. Julian was not in his right mind when he wrote that will. Too many regrets. Too much guilt. Liam stepped between Theodore and Elena. I'm not afraid of you. You should be, Theodore said. Lawyers will be in touch. And then he left, just as suddenly as he arrived. That night, Elena and Liam sat on the back steps of the house, staring out at the moonlit garden. Everything looked peaceful, but inside they were boiling. I didn't even know Julian had a brother, Liam said. My father never talked about him. Elena leaned her head on his shoulder. He seemed dangerous. He is. My grandfather cut him off years ago. Said he was too power-hungry. That he'd do anything for control. Do you think he'll win? Liam exhaled. If the will gets challenged, maybe. Especially if he can prove my father was mentally unstable. But you have the letter. Julian's handwriting. That should count for something. Liam looked at her. He mentioned your mom in it. I know. There was a pause. Do you think he knows something? Liam asked. Something more about your mother. Or about you? Elena hesitated. Maybe. She didn't say it out loud, but a part of her feared that Theodore wasn't here just for the estate. What if he wanted to tear everything apart? The next few days were filled with tension. Liam was pulled into meetings with lawyers, estate managers, people in suits who didn't care about gardens or summer kisses or what it meant to feel truly seen for the first time. Elena helped where she could. But she also felt the slow pull of distance growing between them. The house grew colder. The windows darker. Then one evening Liam came to her. His eyes were tired, but his voice was urgent. There's something I need to show you. He led her to the attic. Past the dusty trunks and fading portraits. At the back, behind a false wall, he revealed an old chest. Julian's journals, he said. I found them while the lawyers were combing the study. He opened the chest. Inside were notebooks, leather-bound, delicate, filled with inked handwriting. Together they flipped through them. They found entries about Camille. Pages and pages of poetry, longing, pain. Drawings of the garden. Letters never sent. But at the bottom they found something else. Photograph. Black and white. Camille. Julian. And, shockingly, Theodore. They looked young. Maybe early 20s. Standing by a lake. Camille in a sundress, smiling. And behind them, a baby. Elena's hand flew to her mouth. Liam picked up the photo. That's not me. No, Elena said softly. That's before. Flipping over the photo they saw handwriting. Camille Julian Theo. Até 1996. Avec Bébé Margot. Margot. Elena whispered. Liam looked at her. You don't have a sister, do you? No, she said. Not that I know of. A chill passed between them. What if Theodore wasn't just here for the estate? What if he had come back, for someone else? The photo burned like a brand in Elena's hand. Camille Julian Theo. Até 1996. Avec Bébé Margot. Margot. A name neither of them had heard before, yet it now echoed in every corner of the attic like a haunting lullaby. Elena's heart raced. If this was 1996, and the baby is, then she'd be around my age. Liam nodded, eyes still fixed on the image. What if Margot isn't just some lost relative? You think she's alive? I think she might be a lot closer than we realize. They spent hours combing through Julian's journals, page after page. Some entries were almost too poetic to understand, as if he had poured his guilt into riddles. But the name Margot kept returning, always in delicate strokes, almost lovingly written. I watched her through the window today. She has Camille's quiet eyes. I wonder if she'll ever know the truth. If I'll ever be brave enough to tell her. Theo doesn't deserve her. None of us do. But she's here, breathing, and somehow that makes this place feel holy again. I see Camille's ghost in every room, but it's Margot's laugh that brings the house back to life. Elena leaned back on her heels, stunned. Liam, what if I'm Margot? He looked at her like he was trying to see her differently. His voice dropped. Do you remember anything unusual from your childhood? I never knew my father, she said slowly. Mom never talked about him. When I was a kid, I asked once and she just said, he belonged to another world. I thought she meant he was dead. But maybe. They were silent for a long time. Dust swirled in the moonlight like forgotten memories. The next morning, Liam disappeared. Elena woke to a note on her windowsill. I have to know the truth. I'll be back before sundown. Don't go into the East Wing without me. L. The East Wing. That part of the house had been locked since the day Elena arrived. Julian had kept it closed for decades. Even the staff pretended it didn't exist. She'd asked once early on and Liam had only said, some doors stay shut for good reason. But now the note sat like a challenge in her hand. Sundown seemed forever away. Elena tried to wait. She cleaned tools, watered the garden, fed the birds. But every creak of the wind seemed to whisper her name. By afternoon, she couldn't bear it any longer. The East Wing's door creaked open slowly, the key from Liam's study fitting perfectly into the lock. Dust exploded in shafts of golden light. The air smelled of cedar, old lace, and something softer, like lavender oil and tears. The first room was a nursery. Everything was untouched. A wooden cradle rested near the window, still rocking slightly from the draft. Stuffed animals lined a shelf. A faded mobile hung above the cradle, with tiny stars and moons circling slowly. Elena's throat tightened. She reached for a nearby dresser, and found more letters. All addressed to Margot. Dozens of them. All in Camille's handwriting. She opened the first. My dearest Margot. You'll never read this, and yet I write it as if you will. Because I need you to know that I loved you. I gave you up because I had to, not because I wanted to. They told me it was the only way to protect you. I watched your cradle empty and my heart has been hollow ever since. Another letter. Dated a year later. He visits sometimes. Theo. He pretends not to see me when he walks the halls. But I know he regrets nothing. He looks at you like property. I don't know how to stop him. I don't know if Julian can either. I only pray that one day, you'll be far from this house. That you'll find a garden. And someone who makes you feel whole again. Tears slipped down Elena's cheek. She stumbled backward, overwhelmed. Could it be? Was she stolen? Hidden away by Julian? Did Camille send her to live under another name? Or had someone else taken her away? Suddenly, footsteps echoed down the corridor. A turn. Liam was back. His shirt was wrinkled, hair tousled, eyes wild. You went in without me. I'm sorry, she breathed. I found the letters. Liam, I think I really am Margot. He didn't look surprised. Instead, he pulled something from his coat pocket. Hospital bracelet. Your full name, he said softly. Elena Margot Rousseau. Elena froze. This was in my father's safety box at the notary's office. Along with adoption papers, sealed. It was signed by Camille. Dated September 1997. Her knees gave out. She sank onto the nursery floor, surrounded by letters and faded toys. "I'm not just a gardener," she whispered. "I'm your Margot," Liam said, kneeling beside her. "Camille's daughter. My father's legacy. You were never meant to live in the shadows." "But why?" she choked. "Why hide me? Why send me away?" "To protect you from Theodore," Liam said darkly. "That man didn't want an heir. He wanted a weapon. And Camille knew that." Elena looked up, tears shimmering. "So what now?" He reached out, gently brushing her hair behind her ear. "Now," he said softly, "we fight back." That evening, Liam invited Theodore to dinner. The man arrived in a tailored suit, smug as ever. But this time, the dining table wasn't set in the grand hall. It was in the garden, under fairy lights, among the roses Elena had planted. "I see you've taken to theatrics," Theodore sneered. Liam smiled coldly. "I find truth easier to swallow under open skies." Elena stepped forward then, holding a folder. "I believe you knew my mother," she said sweetly. Theodore's smile faltered. She placed the hospital bracelet, the letters, and the notarized documents on the table. "I'm Margot." For the first time, Theodore looked shaken. "That's not possible." She was dead. Elena cut in. "Misplaced. Disowned. Pick whichever lie you prefer. The truth is I'm back. And I remember everything now." "You can't prove." "Oh, but we can," Liam interrupted, handing him the photo from the attic. "Your signature's on the back." Theodore stared at it. For a moment no one spoke. Then he stood. "You've made a mistake," he said. "Both of you. You don't know what kind of war you've just started." He turned and walked out. Liam and Elena didn't follow. They stayed in the garden under the stars. Together. "Do you regret it?" she asked softly. "Finding out?" Liam shook his head. "No. Because I didn't just find out who you are." He reached for her hand. "I found you." The garden was no longer just a garden. It was a place of memories, of beginnings, of endings, and of promises finally kept. The summer had faded gently into early autumn, brushing golden leaves across the cobblestone paths where Elena and Liam once walked with dirt on their hands and laughter in their eyes. But now the roses were in full bloom again, crimson, ivory, blush, and a new bench stood under the old maple tree, carved with the initials C+J. Camille and Julian. Elena sat there now, a letter in her hands. Her mother's final letter. Discovered just 2 days ago in an envelope tucked between the pages of a children's book in the East Wing nursery. "To my Margot. If you're reading this, it means you found your way back. I never stopped loving you. Not for one heartbeat. I left you in Julian's arms because I believed he would protect you better than I ever could. I pray the garden brings you peace, the way it once did me. And I hope one day you'll plant something of your own and know that this is home. All my love always." Elena wiped her eyes, the ache in her chest softer now, like the echo of a lullaby. She had spent the last month unraveling her identity piece by piece. Legal battles, old family debts, distant relatives, and one final confrontation with Theodore that had ended in a court order banning him from the estate. The man had retreated to the south of France, his influence finally waning. But more important than the legal victories were the emotional ones. Elena had reclaimed her name, her truth, and her mother's legacy. One crisp September morning, Liam appeared on the garden path with a basket of freshly baked croissants and 2 cups of coffee. "I thought you might be cold," he said with that boyish grin that still made her heart skip. "I thought you might be late," she teased. He sat beside her on the bench, pulling a blanket over their laps. "I'm never late for you." They sat in silence for a while, watching the breeze shake loose the amber leaves. Somewhere nearby, birds sang softly, and the sound of the fountain trickled like a lullaby. "You're staying," Liam said finally. It wasn't a question. It was a truth. Lena smiled. "This house, it's part of me now. And I think there are still stories in these walls. Ones worth telling. Maybe I'll write a book." He nodded. Call it the girl in the garden. She turned to him, heart full. Thank you, Liam. For what? For being the boy next door. For seeing me, even before I saw myself. He leaned closer, brushing his forehead gently against hers. I didn't just see you, Elena. I chose you. And in that moment, beneath the tree where their families once broke and healed, Elena kissed him. Not the rushed kiss of first love, but the deep, steady kind. The kind that says home isn't a place, it's a person. 1 year later, the garden was full of laughter. Friends and neighbors filled the long outdoor table, decorated with sunflowers and white linens. There was music, champagne, and the scent of rosemary in the breeze. At the center of it all, Elena stood in a simple white dress, her hair braided with tiny gardenias. Liam stood beside her in a navy suit, his eyes never leaving hers. They had chosen a small wedding, intimate, tender, among the roses they had once planted as strangers. Vows were exchanged beneath the maple tree, under a string of fairy lights and the watchful eyes of the past. Julian's portrait hung by the fountain, beside a painting of Camille. Elena had placed a single rose below it. Thank you, she whispered to them both. That night, as the guests left and the stars blinked awake, Elena and Liam returned to their bench, hand in hand. Do you think they're proud of us? She asked. Liam pulled her close. I think they always were. Even when we didn't know it. They looked out over the garden one last time before heading inside. The scent of roses in the air, the promise of a new life blooming beneath the autumn sky. And just as they stepped through the doorway, a soft wind rustled the trees, sending a single maple leaf drifting onto the bench behind them. Quiet blessing, a silent farewell, and the beginning of a beautiful forever.